Hi, everyone. I'm Serene Desiree, and today I have on my podcast Harry Goldberg. He's a financial advisor and coach. He helps people get past their limiting beliefs around money and other assets of life.
Hey, great to be
Freudian
here,
slip
Serene.
there. Assets instead of facets. That was good. Um, how you doing, Harry?
Yeah, doing well. Great to be here.
Yeah, we're both in lockdown right now, and so we're just stuck in our houses. I'm loving it.
Yeah,
It's the best prison I've ever had. Um, yeah. So, are you still coaching people while you're in lockdown?
yeah, of course. I mean, even it was like mid 2019, like before the first lockdown, we had Zoom as our default for
Nice.
client meetings.
You got into it before it got popular.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
ahead of the crowd. We did before it was cool. No,
Yeah.
it's actually an interesting story of how we got there. We kind of had it at the background as a background option for clients. And then my business partner, Tristan, broke his ankle or foot. I can't remember now. But he had an injury and then he wasn't able to travel anywhere. So it was either clients go to his kind of smallish apartment at the time, or they meet on Zoom.
Hmm.
And so people started meeting on Zoom. So, oh, well, that actually works. Actually works kind of well. He then went with his daughter and his wife to Germany because his wife's German and has family there. And they spent 5 months there while he was still working and having client meetings.
Ah.
And then obviously everything's on Zoom unless you want to go and travel to Germany for a meeting. It's like, wow, this actually works. So he headed the curve, but they're like, yeah, cool. Let's just make it a default. And we don't have to travel everywhere and we don't have to be in the actual vicinity of our clients. And then suddenly we started getting more clients from other areas of Australia thanks to
Yeah.
that.
It's incredible. It's interesting how there's this kind of perspective that you can take on things where, like, he broke his ankle. Obviously, that's terrible. But actually, if you kind of, I've been thinking about this perspective a lot as I've been trying to use it in my life somewhat successfully and unsuccessfully sometimes. But
Mm.
of when something happens to you and you interpret it as bad, it's only really bad because you had an expectation of what you wanted. You had an
Mm.
expectation of what life was going to give you. But if instead you can just manage to put yourself in the present and just be like, okay, this is how it is. I don't need to assign any like value to this. And then you can kind of take the best path forward, which ended up being using Zoom. This kind of terrible event ended up getting you guys more clients, helping you branch out. So a lot of times it's not the way we look at things, I think.
There's a cool Tony Robbins quote which he likes to share a lot of the time, which is change your expectations for appreciation and then your whole world will change.
Yeah.
Mm.
I like a lot of Tony Robbins stuff, but all the Tony Robbins coaches I know are like, it's like they're trying to be a carbon copy of Tony Robbins.
And you can't do it. Like,
Yeah.
good luck. I mean, if anyone's able to do it, I'll be very, very, very impressed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I don't think it's that possible to be a carbon copy of Tony. Um, I had one. I've met with a few Tony Robbins coaches. I had one who was actually really good. She wasn't trying to be Tony. She didn't
Mm.
pretend to.
Mhm.
But yeah, the rest is yeah. There are
Yeah,
plenty of other places to source your coaches from.
I think so too. But I do know a lot of super successful people who go to Tony Robbins events, like multimillionaires, but they just, I think they kind of, and I think this might be the mark of a successful person, is where sometimes when you pick up a new idea, you kind of get immersed in this idea, and then like this idea is what everyone needs. If you find like meditation, you're like, oh, you got sick, you should meditate, and like you don't have any money, you should meditate, and like it's the solution for everything. Where
Mm.
then once you kind of progress past, and Tony Robbins coaches I think are the same. They're like, oh, Tony Robbins will fix every part of your life. But then when you kind of get past that, you're like, oh, this was like a component of me, but it's only like, but I actually don't agree with this thing he says. Or, like you take the parts that are useful and then you kind of integrate them into yourself. And suddenly it might be useful to people, but you don't recommend it all the time or whatever.
Mm. Like, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people since I went to a couple of his seminars, and it's interesting to compare how people are as a result of that versus other seminars or education stuff which I've run through as well. Um, it's kind of like when you think about it, there are so many people who have read some amazing books like Think and Grow Rich,
Hmm.
but how many people have actually thought and grown rich? Maybe 0.1% of the people who read the book, maybe.
I think that book helped me a lot, actually. I think
Yeah.
think I saw it on Grow Rich.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're a unique breed. Like you have a growth mindset. Most people struggle with it, at least on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's interesting. It seems like a lot of people after university or high school or whatever are like, oh, now I stopped learning. The time for learning has finished.
Learning's over. Playtime's finished. It's
Yeah.
time to work now. Life's only going to get worse from here.
Yeah. And then like you meet them in a bar and they're telling you about how high school was, and they're like 40 and they're telling you about this thing they did in high school, and it's like, oh, you're stuck there. Okay. Like your life is a slog, because I think a lot of people are kind of trapped in this mindset of like, I work 9 to 5 or more than that a lot of times, and then I save money, and then I buy a house which I live in that makes me no money, and that's like their plan.
Well, the plan is I'm going to keep working in this stuff which I don't really enjoy that much, until I can eventually stop working. Oh, what are you going to do when you stop working? Then I'm going to enjoy life. Then it's going to be fun. Okay, cool.
When I'm like 60, and I have all these medical issues and I can't really do all the things that I used to be able to do, that's when I'm going to enjoy life. Yeah.
The people who got the most out of those seminars or those events are the ones who actually played full out. Like the ones who didn't just have fun while they're there, but they actually did the additional work of how can I apply this in my life? Just like what you were talking about, integrating. Like, this is awesome. This is awesome. This is awesome. This is awesome. Yep, cool. Even this experience is awesome. How can I bring this experience into my everyday life? A lot of people lack mentorship, and they've never been really taught to keep themselves accountable. And so they don't have people to hold them accountable. They don't want people to hold them accountable. They don't want to. They don't want to keep themselves accountable, and they don't want to really seek guidance all that much because they want to feel like they already know the answer. So that's cool. They'll go to an event. They'll have a lot of fun. They can jump up and down. They can enjoy themselves. They can feel really good about themselves, and that buzz maybe lasts for about 2 weeks. And then after that, they go back to the way they were, with maybe one thing that they've gotten out of it. But the people who have gotten a lot from it, they say, okay, I'm responsible for my life. I'm responsible for what I'm going to do. I'm going to start taking action now to be able to embrace these changes.
You know, it's tough because the first thing that comes to my mind is drug addicts, but I think it's neural pathways are always the same. Like when you have a drug addict who goes to rehab and they get clean, it's all great. They're all clean. They're not going to do drugs, but then they go back to their old neighborhood and they live with their parents again, or their housemates, and then their entire circle that they used to do drugs with is there, and then they're all in all these locations when they did drugs, and suddenly their brain is like, oh, in this location we do drugs, in rehab place we don't do drugs. And I think it's the same with Tony Robbins. It's like when you're at the Tony Robbins or whatever seminar, I'm this vibrant person who is infinite potential, and I can make all this money. But then you go back to your mom and she's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Get back to your work. Stop playing. You're 30 years old. You need to grow up. And then your dad's like, look, you're not that smart. Stop trying to think you're going to be a business person. And then your friends are like, oh, you think you're better than us. It's like you might come back potentially, and maybe it's not that bad, but like you come back to this world that's completely different than that magical Tony Robbins land. And actually, I think oftentimes the process might be to instantiate small micro changes, or like just move away completely. But if you can't do that, like, just shift your environment one thing at a time, or somehow, I don't know exactly. I just think that's kind of a recurring problem that Tony Robbins, I don't know if he addresses all that well.
I think he's really working on trying to address it. But I don't think he's quite there yet, because most people get 1 or 2 really cool things from the seminar, and then they don't really do anything about it afterwards. Because you go to the seminar and then there's nothing later on, unless you buy an additional service or additional product or whatever it is.
Yeah, well, you're always in the funnel, right?
Yeah, right? You're always in the funnel. There's a funnel somewhere. And no, the biggest part of it is, I suspect that a lot of this might be linked with our personality and our different stages of life, and maybe our attachment level as well, and that kind of jazz. Not 100% sure, but there are definitely elements behind all of this which are saying, well, you want to make a change in your life, do you make these small incremental changes like what you're talking about? Start changing a habit a day, kind of like the James Clear approach, and just kind of keep making those small changes, and eventually you'll be able to transform your life without even looking. You'll eventually be able to say, "Wow, I've made so many changes. This is really cool," without noticing. I think that for a lot of people, though, they're in a lot of, they have a lot, just like what you're talking about with neural pathways. They've got a lot of beliefs. They've got a lot of recurring themes that are going on in their mind, I guess you could say. A lot of the voices which they have in their head are very loud and very prominent. And the best way for them to be able to change, the best way for them to be able to adjust is to just say, no, that voice doesn't exist anymore. Massive change. Let's go. And for some people, they need that. And for anyone who's willing to take that step and go through that scary phase, they'll get a lot out of really embracing it.
I've never had very much luck with just saying like, no, that voice doesn't exist anymore. Like, if you've ever had kind of reoccurring thoughts like self-esteem issues or something, it's I don't know how easy it is to just,
For me, there was, this was actually, because I keep referring back to the Tony Robbins thing, because that was the start of my personal development journey. It was in 2016, and I didn't actually want any of the personal development stuff. I was just there to support my wife because she needed help and she didn't want to go on her own. I'm like, fine, you go. Oh, fine, I'll go with you. I'm not going to get anything out of it. This is just for you. Blah, blah,
I'm already fixed. I'm good.
I'm good, right? You're not listening to any of my advice. You're not doing whatever I'm telling you to do. So obviously you need someone else to tell you what to do, right? Not the best way to be in your intimate relationship, but that's something I've been working on. That was 5 years ago. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Yeah, so we're talking about making that shift, and there was a great example which Tony shared about how he approaches the thoughts which are limiting him or pulling him back. And he started just saying, "Well, that's a funny thought. These are limiting belief, disempowering belief. Assigns it to a particular voice. That's a funny thought," and just kind of watches it go away. I needed to be a little bit more visual than that, rather than just go, "Oh yeah, cool, it's disappeared." I started imagining that it was one of those planes, because most of the time where the disempowering thoughts came up and beliefs came up, or where I felt most frustrated or stressed or needed to change my behaviors, was at work. And I was in Barangaroo, and like in the nice office towers there, and you can see out into the distance and there are no buildings around. And I'd imagine that there's a plane with one of those banners which it's carrying behind it. And on the banner was the thought, which is disempowering. It's like, that person just cut me off in a meeting, for example. Like, look, there it is on the plane. And you know when those planes go off into the distance and they get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and then you can't even read it anymore. And then it's gone. And the massive change, like the silencing of that voice, this was my first foray into mindfulness without even knowing it, was just to be able to say, well, that voice doesn't have any power anymore. It's on those little planes and they keep disappearing.
You're kind of, I like that too, because you're kind of, you've kind of externalized it in your imagination as well. It's no longer kind of a voice in your head. It's like something that you've managed to kind of put out into the world and let it pass. Yeah, that's nice. I think a huge step forward for a lot of people would just be noticing what you're thinking, like just literally just paying attention to what you say, and then not judging it or being like, oh, that was a bad thing to say. I have low self-esteem and I keep hating myself and I don't know how to stop it. And like, you can like have this thought and then notice it and then get tracked into all these other thoughts. Instead, what you can do is just like notice it and kind of, I think one healthy thing to do as well is just accept it, because at some point, like, I thought it was probably there for a reason. It probably, maybe in your life, you, one idea might be like, maybe in your life you got cut down for being too arrogant. And so then your mind put in place this thing where like, oh, I have to not be arrogant. I have to actively stop myself from being arrogant. I have to be self-critical. So like, then it kind of went on overdrive in order to protect you. But like, I think it's nice to just be able to kind of also thank that thought, because, or that mechanism that's creating these thoughts, because in some way, shape, or form, it was there to help you and protect you, even if it's not quite useful anymore. And like, what I think internal family systems is something that I kind of do. And it's like, you treat it like it's a separate part, not a separate part of you, but it's a specific part of you. And then like that mechanism that does all that self-criticism, you can maybe dive into it and find out where it came from. But even if you don't do that, like, kind of thank it for being there and really be compassionate towards it and not critical. And then ask it if it wants to maybe do something else. So like, I have this part of me that was getting down at me every time I didn't play music that day. And then it was like, it kind of built into the cycle of not playing. And I was like, oh, this isn't really helpful. And so instead I just asked I thanked the part, and then I asked it if it wanted to, instead, I gave it the job of like getting a song that I was working on stuck in my head when it was time to work on music. So, and now that happens a lot more. So, it's just, but observing thoughts, I think, is the first step for sure.
Yeah, big time. I remember one of my first like key insights from meditation was when I actually decided, okay, I'm going to go all in on this. I've been doing meditation, 15, 20 minutes a day for about 2 years. And I decided, well, what if I just try and sit down for 2 hours, see where that takes me? Just switch off my phone, switch off my smartwatch, put on 10 alarms and 2 timers for 2 hours time, and then just sit on a pillow on a couch and just be there with my breath for 2 hours. Let's see how that goes. And I started getting really frustrated really quickly. And I remember checking my watch going, oh my God, this has been going for ages. Let me make sure that the time is on. And it had been 5 minutes. I'm like, oh man, just the fact that I was already used to doing 15 or 20 minute, 15 or 20 minute meditations, but just the thought of doing it for 2 hours and then 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh my God, this has been going for way too long. Yeah. And so, well, what am I actually finding why am I finding this so frustrating? Where's the frustration? Well, maybe I'll just explore other times that I've been sitting down and doing nothing and I haven't felt frustrated. What's one of those times? Well, sitting by a pool at a resort with a drink in my hand and enjoying the warm sun. Okay. So what am I doing there? Well, nothing. Okay. Why am I relaxed in that circumstance? But I'm starting to feel stressed out and frustrated in this particular instance. What the hell's going on here? And I started realizing that it's just based on our perception. Our perception of our experience defines our experience itself.
It's true. It kind of comes back to the beginning where you're talking about like expectations of reality. Like you're only having a bad day because of what you perceive as a bad day or what you expected. I mean, that's easy to say and like harder to do.
Yeah, it's got to be said, right? It's and then we then got a question: is that a worthwhile motivation or worthwhile aspiration to have?
Do you talk about meditation with your clients at all?
Yeah, of course. When it's needed, when it's appropriate. The breadth of what we do and our level of expertise in the different areas means that we just bring whatever tools need to be brought, whatever frameworks, whatever resources, whatever new knowledge or wisdom needs to be brought into each session based on the challenge that the client's specifically facing. So, I was going to say a great example, but I'll give the example. But what was the question you were about to ask?
I was just going to ask about your clients, like who your general demographic of clients is.
Cool. Good question. The majority of our clients are millennials, so like mid-20s to early 40s, focused on trying to build their future, trying to make sure that they're making the right decisions for themselves, whether that be for their finances or their careers or with family or with buying a house. Often our generation feels very hard done by, given how easy it was or relatively easy it was for our parents. At least that's the belief which we hold. And so the primary focus which we have with our clients is how can we empower our clients to be able to live the best life that they can possibly live? How can we help them live a fulfilled life? Obviously, what that entails is not just how do you actually live it, but being able to identify it first. And so, given our financial advice background, but then also our coaching experience and our coaching accreditations now as well, we bring coaching and financial advice together to make sure that clients have both the way to use money to live the life they love, but then also being able to identify what that life is. And then that way you're not continuing to work, and then I'll have enough money and I can stop working.
It surprises me that people don't know what their ideal life is. I mean, I kind of thought that everyone would have sort of the ideal life in their head.
Very few people. If someone has it, most of the time, maybe 9 out of 10, maybe even 19 out of 20, they either don't have a vision for their future, or if they do, it's not one which has been really well thought through.
That makes sense.
And even still, even if they've, just like what you were talking about, the guy who's still living in his high school days, they might have created a vision for themselves in the past, and then they haven't challenged it. They haven't reviewed it. They haven't gone back and gone, well, I made those decisions back then. How about now? Where should I move to from here?
What's a good way to figure out what your vision is?
There are quite a few ways to do it. There's the exercise of creating your own life mission statement. What's the purpose of your life? That helps you in clarifying a little bit about what your vision will be. It's definitely a guiding force behind it as well. Understand your current priorities and what's most important to you. Not just your priorities in terms of I've got bills to pay, but priorities in terms of who do you want to spend time with? What are the areas in your life which you really want to grow? Is growth a priority for you? What type of experiences do you want to have? What are your priorities? And then once you understand that, you can then say, okay, well, what does that entail for what of those things? Let's say that I already had it all right now. What of those things do I want in the future? An exercise we run through with clients is we say 10 years into the future is a great target to have, because in 10 years, you don't have the problems that you have today. You'll have other problems, I promise you that, right? But let's just say that in 10 years, you're saying, well, yeah, okay, well, our kids will be a little bit older, or we'll have kids finally. And so then we're not going to have the current challenges which we have. These are the things which we really want. We'll have paid down some of the mortgage and we'll be on higher incomes and life will just be easier in all these different ways. Okay, so then what do you really want? What will your ideal day look like in 10 years' time? And when someone says what they want their ideal day to look like in 10 years, especially when that frame of mind where they've already described what their home is and what type of lifestyle they have and how often they're going on holidays and what their relationships are like and what they're doing for work and those types of things, then when you ask them what their ideal day is, what they're actually describing is what their ideal day would be today. You say, how would you start your ideal day? What do you do first thing in the morning? They're usually describing how they want that day to start, how they wish that they started in that particular morning. So then, through having that vision for the future and what you really want, and it's aligned with your identity and your values and your mission and your purpose, then you can start to bring it back to today and start to bring it back to now and say, well, what can you already incorporate from your vision into today? That's the whole idea.
Good point.
You have a vision, so there's something you move towards, and then the more you focus on it, just like the more you focus on negative beliefs and shitty emotions, the closer they become to you, and the more they take hold. The more you focus on your vision and what you really want and what's most important in your life, then the closer that becomes to you as well.
That's fantastic. That's excellent advice. I think a lot of people could use that.
I hope it reaches a lot of people.
Yeah. When I was thinking of it, I was like, so my ideal house is not built yet, but I mean, what you talked about with the ideal life, I was like, oh yeah, I'd go outside. I'd probably lift weights in the morning, and then I'd like play music for like 4 hours. And I was
Mm.
like, oh, I could do both of those things today. I did yoga today. I didn't lift weights, but like, yeah, I have this kind of goal for. I'm trying to do it now of just like playing music for like 4 hours straight a day, just kind of for the rest of my life, hopefully, which is kind of lofty, but it's like, yeah, it doesn't really need to be like 10 years from now. I could just start doing that today.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. And another thing is like, I guess everyone's experience or everyone's kind of wishes would differ greatly, and then their financial needs would need to differ greatly for that as well. Like if you want kids and you probably want more financial stability, maybe like, I mean, passive income's always good, but like it's somewhat different if you want crazy experiences. Like for crazy experiences that are in like long vacations, you might need a larger lump sum of money. Whereas if you want to have kids, you probably just want like a kind of a steady flowing type of finance, although both would be helpful in both situations.
Well, that's where the wealth planning comes in, right? So,
Mm.
by the way, we're one of the only financial advice companies in the country, or at least the only that we're aware of, that provide coaching as a default and don't provide advice as a default.
What is the
So,
difference?
cool. So, coaching is coming to someone and you express a particular challenge that you have, and they'll use education and resources and frameworks and tools and questions and an understanding and their intuition to be able to guide you to be able to come up with your own answer, asking a whole bunch of questions, assuming that you can actually find the answer for yourself. And then ultimately you have the answer, and then you take the action. Advice is the complete opposite. It's saying, well, here's my financial situation. Here's everything which is about me. What do I do? And then myself as the advisor goes away, takes that information, asks a few more questions to get more understanding, does some research. I look at some spreadsheets. I'm staring at the screen for a whole bunch of time. And then I come back with some products, which I recommend, and some strategy, which I say that you should do. So the one is saying, help me make my own decision. And the other one is saying, tell me what I need to do.
Yeah, the second one is certainly appealing to an authority figure, which
Yeah.
I think is a big problem that a lot of people who have wealth do, because I mean, there's that old story about like you have the accountant and you just give him your money and then he ends up embezzling from you because you just never paid attention to your accounts. Like there's certainly a large problem in just not learning anything about finances yourself and letting other people handle it for you.
It's as if you're asking your parent to do your homework for you and continue to do your homework for you. And then they're going and they're sitting your year 12 exams for you. And then you go to work and they're doing all of your work projects for you. And they're sitting in your team meetings for you.
Yeah, it's I've been in crypto for like 4 years, and I'm very like, waxes and wanes, but when I research cryptocurrencies, I spend like sometimes like 10 or 12 hours researching one coin and getting really into the details. And I'm not really into like the graphs and the charts and all that. I think are like reading tea leaves. It's more like I try to, first of all, I've read a bunch of books on stocks because I also like stocks, and then I try to apply those principles to cryptos. And then like somebody comes along and asks me, what crypto should I buy? And I'm just like, I actually don't want to give you any recommendations because, like, first of all, it's so volatile. I don't want to be responsible for your finances, but like, I just spent like 12 hours researching this thing. And if I wanted to give you advice into how to invest, it would be like, oh, you need to make this your part-time job. Like you need to start like reading all these really hard books. And I mean, for me, at least, I think like if you want to invest seriously in things, you should probably make it into a part-time job. I mean, I don't know, houses, real estate is somewhat different. Like you can buy a positive cash flow property but it's still a job. I mean, you're still managing it most of the time and stuff. But yeah, in this crypto and stock, especially right now, we're in July 2021, and stocks and cryptos they've crashed somewhat, but like everything's way higher than it should be, and everyone is suddenly jumping into it with no idea of what they're doing and just buying. And it's like, it just feels like it's going to end poorly for a lot of people.
I remember thinking, oh, I saw there was an ad. I can't even remember for which of the crypto exchanges it was, but it was on a whole bunch of buses and bus stations and everything.
Luna, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the one. And it was saying when you see it on the sign, Bitcoin, it's time to buy. And I'm telling you, I almost went. It's a sign. I almost went to my portfolio and just, let's sell out of everything, shall we?
Just get out right now.
Get out. It doubled from there, and then it came back to probably the levels where it was when I first saw that sign.
No, yeah, I was doing the same thing. When celebrities were tweeting about it, I was like, oh God, I need to get out.
Right. Short.
Yeah.
But what,
I try to. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, what you're sharing is actually a really cool part of building wealth. It's a very hands-on approach, and we've found that there are four main wealth creation personalities which people can fit into. You've got the two axes. The first one, if you can imagine it, is gratification. Are you delaying your gratification and living a more frugal lifestyle right now in order to have more in the future? Or are you living a more comfortable lifestyle and being more in the present and just kind of being able to enjoy your spending or not having to earn so much now? That makes sense. In order to have your lifestyle. And then the other axis which we have is more hands-on versus more savvy or more hands-off approach. Now, the hands-on side of building wealth is always going to be more focused on business. Whether that business which you have is managing a share or crypto portfolio or managing a property portfolio or actually building up a business where you have employees or your own systems or you're your own boss, that's the hands-on side. The delayed gratification version of that is if you're trying to build up a business that you're going to sell for a mozza. Right? You want to build up this massive business that some venture capital company from the US or wherever is going to come in and buy it, and then you're going to have your 10, 20, 30, 100 mil as a result of it, and then be very happy, right? And then all of your frugal lifestyle and eating cereal for dinner is going to pay off.
Yeah.
That's the extreme of it, right?
Yeah.
The other side of the hands-on approach is more of a lifestyle entrepreneur. I want to enjoy myself now, but I want to be doing it in a hands-on way. So, for example, both myself and Tristan are in that lifestyle entrepreneur side. We're not the tycoons. We're not trying to make a massive amount of coin, but we're definitely using the business to be able to supplement our lifestyle and support ourselves as young dads, as husbands, as being able to have the flexibility for what's most important. Tristan being able to go off to Germany for 5 months before COVID world, to be able to spend time with family, like those sorts of things. It takes a hit to profit because you've got to do everything yourself, but it's a much more rewarding approach. It's giving up a bit of income. That's the more present gratification side, to be able to enjoy life that much more. On the other side is going to be more of the hands-off. And so then you have the people who just focus on their lifestyle and they want to enjoy their life now. And some people might say, you know what, I don't care if I work till I'm 84 or 90 years old. As long as I enjoy my work, then it's never going to feel like work. I'm never going to work the day in my life.
That's a path, like, God bless you.
Yeah, awesome path. It means that you're putting very minimal amount of your savings aside. And the only way that that's going to work while you're actually building wealth is if you earn a really high amount of income doing what you really enjoy doing. And on the other side are the people who are much more frugal, focused on, I'm going to keep working, I'm going to maximize my income, I'm going to minimize my spending, and I'm going to be able to stop working when I'm 45 or 40, or if you're in the FIRE movement, 35, 30.
How would you recommend to somebody on the more passive side of things to structure their savings and their investment in proportion to like a paycheck that they get every 2 weeks?
That I'm going to give the cop out answer of
Yeah,
it depends,
it depends.
right?
Yeah.
Because it really does depend on your own circumstances. Everyone can be coached through it, and we have resources and frameworks to help people actually build their own wealth plan. But how you want to be investing and your attitude to risk, your approach to it, how involved you want to be, what your cash flow is like as to how much you're able to save.
Mm.
It's not a 30-30-30 rule. Like it's
Yeah.
not
It's
a
it's interesting too, because I was just thinking back to the Bitcoin, the cryptocurrency thing that I was saying. Like, I was kind of talking about spending a ton of time researching all these different cryptos, and I was saying like I could recommend that to someone. Which, by the way, I mean, first of all, not everyone has the time or honestly like the financial literacy or the interest or anything like that. So it's not recommended to anyone. But actually, the best strategy so far in all of crypto history would have been to dollar cost average. Like, and dollar cost average into like Bitcoin per se, like kind of the most obvious one. That means like putting $100 a week into Bitcoin, no matter how high or low it is. And that would have been, I mean, I've done well with crypto, but like, I'm not like retiring now, but like that would have been a better strategy. And that would have taken no work at all, no understanding of crypto. And it's just the thing about something like dollar cost averaging is that it's more the emotional thing. It's more like not getting sucked up in a Dogecoin hype thing, or not getting sucked up into like the latest trend or getting greedy with it. It's just about like staying ultra consistent, which is actually more important. I think your personality and your attitude is kind of more important than what you know oftentimes with finances.
Yes, and that's well said. Even Warren Buffett has instructed that his estate is just put into S&P 500 for an index, because why try and pick stocks? Just go with the market instead of putting all that time and effort and then eventually betting against other people who are betting against you all the time.
Yeah.
And dollar cost averaging is a great way to be able to get into the market if you're really worried about what's going on and until you have the better understanding of it. But also it's just a great way to continue to siphon off money that would otherwise be used for expenses. It's kind of like pay yourself first. It's along those lines.
Yeah. Explain pay yourself first.
So most people will, until they become aware of what their spending is, they'll tend to get their paycheck and then they go and spend it, which means that they're paying other people's salaries.
I got paid today. Let's go out drinking.
Yeah, exactly. Let's go and pay the bartender. Let's go and pay all the staff that work there. Let's go and pay the business owner.
Time for my weekly sacrifice of my paycheck to the gods of the bar.
There you go. And then to the Uber driver, let's pay his salary, and then we'll pay some money to the Uber executives as well.
Yeah, and then extra because you vomited on the Uber guy's seat, and so you have to pay that $150 cleaning fee. Like it's it's all part of the game.
I didn't know that existed, but that's cool.
I've never done that. Just so you're aware. I just talked to a lot of Uber drivers. They're the best. Anyway, yeah, but pay yourself first is
pay yourself first rather than paying others. So put money into your savings, whether that's directly into a bank account for a specific purpose or a specific thing you're saving for, or if that's putting money towards investments for your future. You're paying your future self.
This is from the Barefoot Investor, and this is a piece of advice that I got. To be honest, I'm not that organized. I don't do specifically this, but I put a lot of my money in investments anyways. It doesn't really matter, but it's so you have 100% of your paycheck, obviously, and the idea is like you take 20% of that, no matter how much you're earning. If you're earning, I mean, I've earned $13 an hour, and you can do this. It's just, well, it depends. I was earning $13 an hour in America, but like I didn't have a kid and stuff, so I understand. But like you take 20% of your paycheck, and then you split it in two. And the first half is for savings. So savings are like, I want to go on a vacation. My car might break down. Like I need a new phone, whatever, And then your other 10% is the important 10%. It's the wealth creation. So that goes towards making you money. And it can go towards a house. It can go, not one that you live in, not a house that you live in. Those don't make you money, but stocks or investing in businesses or whatever, like something that will make you money. And then the savings, the important part of the savings is that it's actually a barrier. So like, if you need money, you have the savings and you don't dip into your wealth creation account when your car breaks down suddenly. So I thought that was really useful personally, but what do you think about that sort of strategy?
Look, I think that's handy for people who are trying to get started and who aren't quite sure how to manage their finances. And just as a baseline, cool, go for it. I think that there are many more factors which need to be taken into account in order to manage your cash flow properly. Obviously, you need to take into account what your goals are for the future, but then also the different milestones that you're about to be reaching. So, for example, this might be, you might be planning on having kids in 5 years' time. And until that time, you really want to be able to make sure that you go traveling for all the things which you won't be able to do for another 15 years after that. Or if you do, it won't be quite the same experience. There are different types of holidays and the like which you'll want to do then. Maybe it makes sense to be able to, over the next 2 years, out of those next 5, be able to just spend more of your money for things that are really going to be exciting for you. And things that create beautiful memories and allow you to really enjoy yourself. And then the next 3 years, focus much more on saving to be able to have the money which you need as basically the runway for until the primary carer is able to go back to work, or how that might impact career and the like. That could work much better for those people. Sometimes people will have kids, as you were saying, and then that becomes a big expense. And then it's not possible to save 20% of your income without severely cutting costs back. And a great example, clients of mine who we went through cash flow and we went to really kind of drill down and let's make sure that the amount that you're spending is actually appropriate for the amount which you have. They eventually got to the point of cutting back on a whole bunch of expenses, but they're still going to be in deficit. For them, that's perfectly fine to be in deficit because they're there until their youngest child goes through childcare and then ends up at primary school. And government schooling is much, 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 much cheaper than childcare. So for them, they're quite comfortable with the fact that they're in a cash flow deficit. Firstly, they're aware of the fact they're in a cash flow deficit. So they're spending more than what they're earning. But more so, they're quite comfortable with the fact that they know that they can turn that around in another few years. In another few years, they'll turn it around and they can already see what their lifestyle, what their cash flow position will be when their lifestyle costs change. Without actually needing to give up anything of their lifestyle. They'll be in a better position.
Are you, do you talk to your clients much about making passive income?
Yeah, well, that's a big part of the wealth plan as well. Right? A bigger mistake which a lot of people make is that when they're trying to build their wealth, they put all of their eggs in one basket, everything into one. Everything goes into the business which they're trying to build, or everything goes into a particular property which they're buying, or everything goes into crypto.
Great idea.
I've
put it all in crypto.
Everything in crypto. What's
not even Bitcoin, just a shit coin. Just go on crypto moonshots, pick a coin, do it. 100%
yeah, cool. Just whatever people recommend on Reddit. Right?
Yeah, if they say like it's 100x guaranteed, it's guaranteed. You just have 100K. Put it all in. That's what you should do.
Yeah, when it gets to 80x, then you can pull out.
Yeah,
Don't get greedy.
Be smart about it. Yeah.
Hey, do you have any good crypto recommendations?
No. Dollar cost average in Bitcoin is what you should do.
Yeah. So, but the most important part is to know that the most financially successful people, or if you go and speak to anyone who actually has a reasonable amount of wealth, and I'm talking a few mil net of debt, they're very unlikely to have all of their assets or all of their finance or all their wealth in just one asset.
Did you just say a few mil net of debt?
Yeah.
What is net of debt?
So if you have, how much money have you got minus your debt?
Oh yeah, okay.
That's how much you have. Yeah. So however much money you have minus the amount of debt which you have.
Yeah.
And then that's the amount. That's your net worth, right? Net of debt. Cool. So anyone with a few mil, at least, they're very, very unlikely to just have one particular asset. It's very unlikely that all their wealth is tied up in a business or a particular share portfolio or one property.
I think Elon Musk actually did that. I think he made, I think 400 million from, I think he made around 400 million from PayPal. And then he put every single cent of it into Tesla to the point where he had to like live off of his rich friends because he couldn't afford a house.
Yeah.
But you know, that's Elon Musk. He's an alien from outer space.
Apparently he'll be the leader of the Martians, the new Martian world.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's Elon Musk. There are plenty of reasons why Elon Musk is not the best role model for us.
Yeah.
In some ways, maybe, but in many ways, probably not.
Fair enough. Everyone's got their own role models, I suppose.
There are certain aspects of him which we can take away, and we can learn a lot from. There are other elements of, that's okay, just focus on what you've got to do before your health. That way you're going to be able to get results. Maybe not. I wouldn't take relationship advice from him, for example.
No.
Probably not parenting advice. I don't know much about him parenting at all.
No, I think about that a lot. I mean, I don't want to talk about him too much because, like, I don't know who he is. I don't know what kind of father he is. But it's like, I think there's this interesting thing. Marcus Aurelius, this Stoic philosopher in ancient Rome, he wrote this book and Meditations, and people talk about it a lot. I don't know how much they actually read it, but they talk about it a lot. And he was a great leader, and then his son was kind of a shithead. Like he just raised, I don't know. His son was like this. He became emperor, and just loved to be a gladiator and fight, and he didn't really care about the empire. And eventually, his terrible leadership ended up with a coup, and they killed him and stuff. But it was like, I think about Marcus Aurelius as being this great leader, and I'm like, actually, I wonder if he was a little bit less of a good leader and didn't focus so much of his time on leadership, and he actually focused on the next generation more. I wonder if things would have actually been better. But yeah, Elon Musk, I don't know about, but this ancient guy 2,000 years ago, I can certainly comment on.
Well, the truth is we don't know that much about him either. We just know the thoughts and the meditations he chose to share.
Yeah, we don't know much at all.
Yeah. So with the exception of crazy people like Elon Musk, whom I have a lot of respect for in certain ways, the majority of people who are quite wealthy very rarely hold just one asset, and very rarely just have everything as passive, and very rarely have everything as hands-on.
And passive income, I think, is generally kind of a misnomer. There isn't a lot of passive income. There's like, if you write a movie, if you make a movie or a script or a song, it's pretty passive, I think, somewhat. But
you've been very, very active in building that.
Yeah.
In the first place.
Yeah, passive income is very rarely passive, I think. And then oftentimes you're maintaining it. Like it's but what kind of passive income do you recommend for people?
Sorry, what type of passive income?
Yeah, do you usually recommend for people? I mean, it's so varied. Maybe it's not quite as easily categorized into like
it's so varied. We talk about it more as a hands-off approach. So the ability to buy and hold. Without necessarily needing to do that much research into it. So, for example, purchasing a managed fund which reinvests any of the income and distributions back into it, and then your wealth continues to grow, and you've gone through and you've made the decisions about how you wish to invest. Maybe it's just a particular ETF, maybe it's a managed fund with a particular approach. Whatever it is for you, maybe it's a particular company which you really like the idea of, or a group of companies. And
that's particularly useful in Australia, where we have good dividends.
Yeah, it is.
In the States, I think they double tax your dividends.
Yeah, sure, but it depends on how long you're actually planning on building this wealth for. Is this income which you want for being able to live off right now as your income, or is this something which you're just hoping that it's going to be able to build wealth for you over the long term?
So let me get into this issue that's quite speculative, and I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat for a second, which I'm predisposed to do. And so take it with a grain of salt. But I actually, and I've been saying this almost nonstop for like a year now, I think it's likely that we're going to have, or America at least is going to have a severe economic collapse in the near future. In terms of, I mean, for like, I can list off like 10 different reasons, but do you think that's probable or possible?
So when you say in the near future,
I mean, I'm not like trying to big short it. I'm not like trying to guess exactly when it's going to happen. The next few years, I think we're going to have maybe even like a worse than 2018 type recession. Maybe even like a 1920s type recession, like a 1929, so 20s, 30s.
2018 didn't really feel like.
Sorry, I meant 2008.
Yeah, 2008. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was fine here in Australia, but in the States, like you had houses going for a third of their previous price or whatever.
Well, we still had a pretty big collapse, at least in asset prices. Right, primarily companies and shares. Look, I would say that the writing's on the wall, that there is going to be a very significant correction. The amount of money that's been printed continues to be printed.
25%, like you're just making 25% more money. Like it's just appearing out of nowhere. It's crazy.
Yeah,
probably more. I mean, yeah.
There's a lot of people spending, and it's not because people are saving it up and have the cash in their back pocket and are jumping into the market to buy. That's what usually happens when the market hits the bottom, and then they get all excited. There's a lot of indication that this approach, especially new monetary theory or modern monetary theory, that this approach will result in some pretty negative outcomes at some stage. We're just not sure when that will be. We avoided from 2008, even the dot-com bubble in 01, we've avoided having to face the actual economic realities of those particular environments. And the main way we've been doing that is by the governments ultimately making money cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And then when it's so cheap that you end up with negative interest rates, then let's just print more money and just pump it into the system and start giving it to people. There's the debt which we have as in our economies is eventually going to become an issue. And a lot of people who are buying assets at very, very high prices will eventually have to wait a very long time to see those prices again. But whether that happens now, or whether that happens in a few years, or whether that happens in 15 years, time will tell. We don't even know what will trigger it. Is it China invading Taiwan and then the whole world goes to World War III? Will that trigger it? Will it be what we come out of after that will trigger it? Will it be another virus which just adds to COVID, or a new variant which actually starts killing a lot of people and putting every hospital on high alert, and then no one's able to work? I don't know what will actually happen, but it will be a big surprise if we don't have a significant correction in the market at some stage soon.
I agree. I think you mentioned them printing money, which is the last time they gave us a stimulus in America, they gave me I just saw $2,003 in my account a few months ago, but I think it was something like 1.4 trillion, and that was just printed. I mean, I think there's only $8 trillion in the economy right now, so it's like you kind of just printed, maybe more, maybe less, but I think last year they printed 22% of all money, and this year they probably printed another 20% or something. I don't know, but so we're inflating the dollar. Not only that, but and I'm talking about the US, but I think we're so tied to the US that I don't see it not affecting other countries. In the US, there was a housing moratorium. And so if you're a renter, you can't be kicked out even if you're not paying rent. And so that means if you have a mortgage, what they could do, mortgagees, homeowners don't have to pay their mortgage right now, but the banks can do one of two things. They can say, oh, you had a 30-year contract, So now we're just going to make it, instead of you paying back $30,000 in a year, which is not very feasible most of the time, we're just going to extend your mortgage another year, and then you'll just pay it off. You'll just have a 1 year more mortgage, and that would be fine. And so they just continue normal payments. But if they don't do that, we're probably going to see a lot of homeowners who have to immediately pay $30,000 on their homes, which could be an issue. Another one is like in 1929, so right before the 1929 stock collapse, the Great Depression, we saw crazy stock prices. We saw these prices we saw like, it started off, it seems like in Florida, where like pieces of land that were completely useless swampland were selling for like 10 times what they were worth a few years ago. And then we saw stocks. We saw a stock going up. We saw a company buying that stock, and then their share prices would go up. We saw a company buying, like investing in those types of companies, and then their share prices would go up, 10x or something. And like, there was just a complete lack of government regulations on these stocks, on these various companies. And now we're seeing that in crypto because the cryptocurrencies, I love crypto, but the space is completely unregulated. We have these crazy loans being loaned out with little or no collateral. And the thing about high stock, like Tesla is worth, they're trading it. They 10x not too long ago, a few months ago. And like, they're barely making any money. It's just like, why would they, these prices, these stock prices, these crypto prices are just, I saw this one cryptocurrency. It was a game being released. It's called Illuvium. And they haven't even released their beta yet. And their coins, if you add up the price of all the coins and value it based on the coin price, like you would a stock, the company would be worth $100 million. And they haven't even released a game yet. Like, there are these crazy inflated prices. And when that happens, generally you have a few people at the top who end up taking all the money from everyone else, because crypto stocks are essentially a Ponzi scheme. Like, if one person gets a Lambo, they took other people's money to get that Lambo. It doesn't come from nowhere. So it seems like the crypto market it's possible that might precipitate some sort of financial collapse.
Maybe. I doubt we're, as a society, we're that heavily invested in crypto. It's not something which most institutions hold. It's not something which most investors hold. And in and of itself, yeah, it's a useless thing which you're holding. Bitcoin is valued at over $1 trillion. If you add it all up, like. But if you compare that to the overall financial market, it's still a drop in the ocean.
Yeah, fair enough.
You can find a handful of companies that can be worth close to that. But what we've got.
Free.
Yeah, we've got a few companies,
like
right?
Apple, Amazon.
Not sure what Tesla's worth, but
yeah,
aren't they past the $1 trillion mark, or at least Apple and
I'm not sure what Tesla,
Microsoft. Yeah. Like those are
Amazon
huge
for
numbers.
sure did get past, but yeah, they kind of fluctuate. I'm not sure, but yeah, they are huge numbers. Yeah.
So all these numbers, like the numbers aren't my area of expertise, ironically, even though I'm an advisor. As you can tell, the majority of what I look at is people's mindset and how relevant their financial exposures and their financial strategy is to the way that they want to experience their life, and to be able to use money to enable to live the life they love. Which means that you've got to be very well aware that any of the investments which you're using, the way that you're investing, are aligned with the goals which you're striving for. So
let me go back and let me be a little bit contentious here, because I think one question that I have is, if you think that the economy is set to have a big correction in the next up to 15 years, who knows? Do you think buying ETFs is actually a good idea? ETFs, by the way, are like accumulated stocks. So like, there's a genius out there who picks all the best renewable stocks, which, by the way, I think are a terrible investment. But he picks all the best renewable stocks, and then whatever. So, do you think ETFs are a good idea?
So, exchange traded funds, there are a whole bunch of different types of them. But just to clarify, it's basically a fund is like a managed fund where someone else is choosing the stocks for you. Either they do that based on an index, and they just have a computer which is choosing it, with a whole bunch of predetermined conditions for which stocks they're going to be buying or selling, or you've got someone who's actively choosing it. Yeah. So, and then the reason why they're exchange traded is because you're able to trade them like shares. So you trade lots of different shares with one particular trade. That's why it's an exchange traded fund. And then you'll find ETPs, exchange traded products, which come up as well, and they're all slightly different, slightly nuanced. But I guess the question you're asking me is, if the market's likely to crash, is now a good time to invest, or should you just hold your money in cash?
In ETFs. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, yeah, the ETF is an example of a product which gives you exposure to the market. It's like you going out and buying a whole bunch of shares in the market.
Yeah. So I guess I didn't want to say exactly invest, because there's different types of investment. There's some recession-proof stocks, I would say, whereas an ETF is kind of like, oftentimes it's a big part of the market. Like, you're kind of investing in a certain sector or a certain part of the market as a whole. And so if the entire market is going to dip down and you're investing in sort of the entire market, then do you think that's a good idea?
So it depends on, comes back to depends, right? It depends on your own circumstances if you're trying to make that decision. So if you need the money, which you're looking at investing in the share market, for example, and you're looking at using that money for a particular expense which is coming up in your future, such as being able to take time off work when you welcome a baby, or being able to go on an awesome holiday when COVID ends, or being able to buy a new car when your current one's about to break down, or doing some renovations on your home, or buying a property, or whatever it is for you that's really important, then, and you plan on using that in, say, 2 years, maybe 3 years, maybe even 5, then just investing all of your all your money into the share market, which seems overvalued, or into highly priced assets, is probably not going to be the best idea. By the way, just a heads up, usually when the market first crashes, gold also drops quite considerably as well, because there's a flight towards liquidity. So people usually sell all of their assets, especially if they geared up. So often gold also has a nice big drop very quickly in the beginning, and then starts to come back up and quickly regains. So in many cases, gold could be doing better your cash could be doing better than gold. Yep. But that's relying on the fact that you can predict when the market's going to drop. And if the market continues to grow at another 10 to 20 to 30% each year, even 5% each year, then if you've just got your money sitting on the sidelines, or if you've got your money sitting in assets which aren't generating any return, then you may very well be putting yourself at a great disadvantage.
It's true.
Especially with the fact that if you look at why government policies have been so excited about printing more money and continue to print more money, it's partly is because every government's doing it. So it's not like one particular country is printing a whole lot of money, with the exceptions of Zimbabwe and Venezuela and Colombia and Lebanon and a few other places, and even Turkey's in a risky spot. But with the exception of those types of countries, almost every country is printing more money in line with other countries, which is why we haven't seen huge changes in currency values across different countries yet. Now, the other reason why politicians and those in power are very happy to continue to print money and continue to make money so cheap is because it means that the government's able to give more money to the people who elect them and put them in power, or who don't lead a revolt and put them out of power, depending on what country we're in.
That checks out.
So you've got to then ask yourself the question of everyone who's looking to make sure that the status quo remains. The people with the greatest amount of power, who could be the people who lead us responsibly through this, are also the ones who are going to try and keep the status quo going for as long as possible. And they're the ones who have power over the distribution and creation of money. So one could very well argue that they've got a lot of tools in their belts and a lot of spare ammo, which they're still able to use. And they'll keep using that for as long as they need to keep everything as normal and hunky-dory as it possibly can. And maybe it will just hold out until until technology can just do everything for us, and we've got free energy, and then we've got free food because technology is making it, and we're all nice and safe, and everyone's happy, and then no one actually needs any money. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know.
That sounds like a. It sounds like a. I wouldn't bet on that future. What do you think?
Not in the short term, by the way.
Yeah. What do you think the solution for this? I mean, do you have a solution for this kind of terrible political mess that we find ourselves in?
Solution for the political mess, or a solution for how to manage our finances in this political mess?
Look for the finances.
Yeah, cool. From a financial point of view, once again, it depends on what's going to allow you to sleep easy at night. Because everything that we've just discussed and everything I just shared is still just guessing. It's not actually, like, I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what's going to happen. And for all we know, the economy might be able to row itself out of this problem without too much devastation to the environment and the world, hopefully, or to people. And perhaps government policies are going to become a lot fairer. And the way that the wealth which is created is distributed directly to people rather than to the very, very, very wealthy and companies and banks. That would be a hope. But look, at this stage, it depends on how comfortable you are with riding the wave. One of the biggest, most important things that you can do is make sure that you have a proper emergency buffer. So some people will say you just need 2 to 3 months worth of your lifestyle expenses. I'd say if you're really worried, maybe make sure you got 12 to 24 months of your lifestyle expenses just in cash sitting there, to make sure that if the economy really does get hit hard, that you've still got enough money to be able to afford what you want, even if you've lost your job, or if you're running your own business, you don't have any clients anymore, those types of things. That would be a very effective way to be able to keep yourself a little bit safe. And the rest of it is how much are you investing in yourself rather than investing in others.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, if you invest in yourself, then you can take advantage of almost any situation.
You can invest in your knowledge of, or you can invest in crypto, for example. But if you invest in yourself and your own resilience, then you're impervious to any particular massive crashes that happen. So what? You lose some money in Bitcoin, you've still grown as a person.
Well, I am mindful of the time, so we'll finish pretty soon. But I'm thinking a lot about a recession right now and my kind of my plan for it, because actually wealth is made in a recession. That's when most people, that's when a lot of people lay the foundations of their wealth. Like after the 1920s, when the stock prices, went to half, and then a bunch of people jumped on and bought, like Bitcoin's half right now, and then it went to a quarter of what it was, and then a bunch of people spent all the money that they had buying stocks at a quarter of the price, and then went to like a tenth of the price, and then suddenly nobody had any money left except the Rothschilds, who just had this massive amount of cash, and they had businesses. I mean, in a recession, business is probably what you want, right? Something that's going to keep giving you money. Or like business. A house. Yeah, well, successful business for sure. But even like a rental property, like if money is worth half as much, instead of $100, you get $200. Like, it doesn't really matter. But they had all this money, and so they just bought up all the stocks, and then suddenly the Rothschilds made an even bigger fortune. And so I'm thinking lately about, like, I'm not prepping for a recession. I'm not that worried about it, but I'm thinking, like, if a recession does happen, I think I would want a large store of money, not just for my own personal lifestyle, but if Bitcoin goes to $10,000 again, like, I want to buy a couple Bitcoins, It would, yeah. So That's just my own personal belief. Like, always take advantage of whatever's happening.
Yes. Sorry, excuse me. Oh. Yeah, and that's sensible, especially given that that's your mindset. I'd encourage everyone who's trying to focus on this. Grab some water. Not COVID, don't worry.
You can't catch COVID through the computer yet.
Are you sure? I hear these new variants are getting pretty scary. Cool. Who knows how they're going to transmit next, all these viruses online. Look, I think all of this really comes back to our own mindset. A lot of people come to us about finances, if finance is what a lot of people come to us around career or around stopping a crappy habit which they have, or being able to have a better experience of life. But those people who come to us around finances, there's usually a fear which is underlying it, and a fear which is driving the reason why they're so focused on this particular financial decision. And if you're able to get past, to anyone who's listening, if you're able to assess why you're actually so focused on making this decision and what your mindset is, and then you're able to build your resilience, then that's a far more valuable resource than having some cash in the bank account. Your resilience and your ability to influence others, or your ability to influence yourself, your ability to have a great experience of life, your ability to build something which is incredible, your ability to be able to be employed by someone, and how employable you are will just become more and more valuable the worse and worse an economy is. Like, a lot of people are focused on how they're able to have more money in the future, or increase their investments, and they're not satisfied with the standard 5 or 7 or 8%. They want the 10% or 12% or maybe 20%. What they don't realize is that by focusing on why they're spending the way they're spending, and then shifting the way that they spend and shifting the way they use their money, they can actually increase their overall performance themselves by already using the income which they currently have. And so you can get lost in this world of, how much money should I invest? Where should I invest it? Should I put it into crypto? Do I put it somewhere else? What do I do with my money? Where do I put it? How do I invest and make sure that I'm recession proof? Well, focus on your mindset first. And then from shifting your mindset and your perspective of life and the way that you see the world, it will be much easier when it comes to making that decision around, how do you actually invest? Like, where do you actually put your money? Because a lot of the time people are so focused on where they're going to put their money because they're scared that they're going to lose it all. A great example out there for anyone who's skeptical of this is, I had clients, I had recently a conversation with them late last year, and to give you an idea, they have a household income of about 650, 700K. They're doing really well. That's a lot of money in Australia, if anyone's listening to this outside of Australia. And much, much more than most people.
That's like a doctor and an OnlyFans performer.
Or someone who's very, very, very senior in an organization, right?
Or that.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Their biggest fear is that they don't have enough money. And underlying part of that was, what if someone just takes it all away? What if I lose it all? And so their investment decisions until that time was making investments based on the fear of losing money, the fear of losing your wealth. And that's a pretty scary way to be walking through life, because you're always worried about someone taking away this hard-earned money which you have. And that's what most people are worried about. Most people are worried that they can't have what they want to have. Most people are worried that everything that they've worked so hard for is going to disappear. Most people do more to avoid someone taking something from them than they will to go and earn that exact same amount. They'll put in more effort to stop someone taking $100,000 than they will to go and work and then earn $100,000. Most people. And that's unfortunate. It's because many people are driven by fear of loss, fear of not being enough. So if you ever find yourself diving into this kind of world of how do I invest money? Where do I put my wealth? This small wealth which I have, how can I take advantage of the next recession? First, check with yourself, is this something which is being driven by fear or greed? Because if it is, you got to take a step back before you're putting your money on the line, because otherwise you're just running the risk of gambling. So we focus on our own beliefs about money. If you write a sentence down for yourself and you say, money is, or to me, money is, how do you finish that sentence for yourself? Explore it. Think about it. Think about your earliest money memories. What's that taught you about money, cash flow, investing, how tightly you hold on to money versus how free you are with it. Work out those types of things for yourself. And then from that frame of mind, coming into investing is going to be a very different experience. And then let's talk about what's going to happen with the market, and is it going to crash, and how do you get ready for when everything in the market is just going to get destroyed.
That is excellent advice. Wow. I think there's a lot of people who need to hear that twice. They need to play that on repeat, because that's absolutely excellent. Where can people find you, Harry?
Check me out on LinkedIn. Just check out the website, purposeadvisory.com.au. There's a whole lot of stuff there as well. We're on Facebook, not as active, but you can find me, Harry Goldberg, on LinkedIn. You can reach out if you really want to have a chat, or just go to www.purposeadvisory.com.au and reach out from there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Great. This has been a fun session.
Yeah, it has. All right. I'll see you later.
See ya.